Tonight, drama on the harbour. Tourists forced to abandon a seaplane after an aborted takeoff. Tax cut changes. The opposition calls the Prime Minister a liar and demands an early election. A father killed in a motorbike crash at Mount Pritchard. The actions of police now under investigation. Vandals take an angle grinder to a statue of Captain Cook and tear it down. Plus, an Australia Day heatwave on its way with Sydney set to bake. And Vegas-bound clubs front the NRL. Will visa issues be resolved before the historic doubleheader?
This is 9 News with Peter Overton.
Good evening. We begin tonight with pictures of a dramatic rescue on our harbour after a seaplane was forced to abort its takeoff near Shark Island. Among the passengers left clinging to the aircraft, a group of tourists from North Wales celebrating a 50th birthday. And they say things could have been much worse.
Stranded off Shark Island and their damaged seaplane is their life raft. It's windy and the water's choppy. Tough conditions to keep your balance.
Yep, it's in the drink.
Boaties on passing yachts capture the drama as rescue crews guide the 8 passengers to safety and ferry them back to land.
We were all a bit shocked, obviously.
It was just after 11 o'clock when the seaplane was heading out for a scenic flight to the northern beaches.
We were going to Cottage Point for a degustation.
Bounce, 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 and then boom. And then next thing, plane just went to one side.
I saw the damage out the window straight away and knew we weren't going to Cottage Point then.
Takeoff aborted and the pilot moved fast.
He unbuckled my seatbelt and he opened the door and he gave me a little nudge to get out. Wasn't sure if it was going to sink, but it didn't.
All unfolding within eyesight of the Rose Bay base, Sydney Seaplanes staff went to the rescue.
Once they saw what happened, of course they were straight into the boat, straight out to the site and removing the passengers and brought them straight back into our base here.
The plane no longer able to stay afloat, but somehow nobody was injured in the jolt.
The plane appears to have hit something, whether it be some waterborne object or a large wake.
Nearly 4 hours after the incident, the intricate salvage operation is underway. Crews winching the plane onto the back of a barge so it can be taken for both investigation and repair. The pilot praised for getting his passengers out.
He's distressed and upset, of course, because pilots take pride in not damaging aircraft.
Finally airborne once again, but still on a precarious angle, the aircraft was carried from the harbour. As for these UK tourists, it was a memorable way to mark a milestone birthday.
We're also grateful. It could have been worse and it's been handled well so far.
And if they're game, the celebrations will continue.
We'll look at rescheduling them for another day on their flight.
In Rose Bay, Liz Daniels, 9 News.
A tussle over tax is underway, with the opposition launching a scathing attack on the Prime Minister. But with every taxpayer set to have more in each pay packet, Anthony Albanese is adamant he's acting in the country's best interests.
With protesters chanting outside,
Albanese, you can't hide!
The Prime Minister, in front of friendlier faces, insisting he's not hiding, but helping.
Australians are looking for more help. Australians deserve more help, and today I can confirm that more help is on the way.
Anthony Albanese confirming a new tax policy, the opposition confirming new attacks.
He truly is the Pinocchio of politics.
The liar in the lodge.
I think at the moment the Australian Prime Minister owes an apology to the Australian public, but he hasn't given it.
I'll tell you what my integrity is. Not looking at low and middle income earners and saying, sorry, I'm just the Prime Minister, I'm not in a position to help you.
You won't have to wait for tax returns. The money will come in each pay packet, meaning when June rolls into July, those earning $45,000 per year will get $15.46 more in their weekly pay. For those earning $90,000, $37.10 more. For Australians on $150,000, more than $70 more. And anyone on more than $190,000 a year will get $87 more per week.
Is this really the best that Labor can do in the middle of a housing, rental and cost of living crisis?
This package will have to go through the Parliament. They say they want more.
This is the package that we'll put to the Parliament, and we're confident that it'll be carried by the Parliament.
A new tax battle that began at breakfast.
When we find a better way to deliver bigger tax cuts to more people to help them with the cost of living, then our responsibility is to do that.
I think you should call an election and put the change position to the Australian people.
Advice from Treasury stating the redesign will not impact the inflation outlook, meaning no impact on interest rates. The Treasurer revealing he consulted Reserve Bank Governor Michelle Bullock to confirm.
The Prime Minister insists this is not the end of cost of living relief, hinting at more support in the May budget.
Tax talk may be tiring, the government hoping the changes help everyone rest a little easier. Charles Croucher, 9 News.
And our political editor, Charles Croucher, joins me from Canberra. Evening, Charles. What more can the government do to ease the cost of living?
Evening, Pete. Well, the Prime Minister used today's speech to announce an ACCC investigation into supermarkets. There is already a Senate inquiry and a union-backed examination of grocery prices, but the consumer watchdog has greater powers. In particular, the ACCC will look at the disparity between what producers are paid for goods and what we all pay for those same goods at the checkout. Woolworths and Coles have consistently said they will cooperate with these inquiries and are already pointing to prices moderating. Finally, Pete, there will be more money for Consumer Group Choice that will help consumers find the cheapest prices at supermarkets this year.
Charles, thank you. The actions of police are tonight under investigation after a father of two died when he crashed his motorbike into a parked truck. Moments earlier, officers had tried to stop the man after he rode through a red light.
A mangled motorbike wreckage dragged from the bumper of a parked truck. The ride removed from Horton Street in Mount Pritchard as the rider was remembered. 38-year-old Adam Moore, a husband and father of two, one of his four brothers at the scene and overwhelmed.
Best brother, it's going to be sadly missed, I don't know what to say. He was just a good bloke, you know what I mean? Just loved everyone loved him.
At one point, a brother's grief turns into anger and aimed at authorities.
Why, you never noticed what my mum and dad
It was just after midnight when Adam smashed into the parked truck. Police first noticed him minutes earlier, speeding through a red light. Officers turned on their own lights and sirens, but say no pursuit was started.
We're working under the assumption in the investigation that when he crossed to the incorrect side of the road, he became aware of the presence of pursuing police.
Adam's brother also told 9 News that the father of two was a wanted man on the run from the law. Whether or not that played a part in his death will form part of the investigation.
The 38-year-old was wanted by police in relation to habitual offending whilst driving and riding.
A critical incident investigation has been launched looking at whether the role of police played any part in the father's death. In Mount Pritchard, Alex Heinke, 9 News.
Two Nepalese teenagers who went missing on a school trip have been found. Mabindra Poon was found in Burwood this afternoon after disappearing on Sunday. His cousin, Sarab Poon, who was last seen at Sydney International Airport on Tuesday, was found in Coffs Harbour. If you think it was warm today, think again. Dangerously hot conditions are set to smash our city over the long weekend. The scorching weather tonight bringing with it a number of warnings.
Rising in the east, a magical moment in Maroubra. And while first light hadn't quite hit, the heat had. At 5:20 this morning, Sydney Airport clocked 26 degrees. Further south at Bellambi, it was already nearing 30, and it's just a taste of what's to come.
We're expecting maximum temperatures of around 37 or 38 degrees in the city and potentially up to 40 degrees in the western suburbs.
I think we'll be back down here early in the morning. Yeah, get out there and then get out of the heat during the middle of the day.
We won't be down here tomorrow. It's going to be too hot.
The forecast heat wave, large swell and Australia Day crowds being described as a dangerous cocktail by surf lifesavers.
We're really regarding this just like a grand final day, where we have to prepare and throw everything at this weekend.
A red and yellow army 20,000 strong, shark drones doubling as safety scouts, along with helicopters and 70 jet skis scouring our state's coastline, keeping eyes on the million beachgoers expected tomorrow as the drowning risk increases fourfold.
If you want to come down to the beach this weekend and you want to get on the sand or in the grass, and you want to have a few beers or a glass of shardy, do not go into the water because that is just a lethal mix.
As the cooling off moves from seaside swims to at-home air conditioning, there'll also be pressure on our state's energy grid.
And while the market operator will be on high alert for shortages over the long weekend, it says there's sufficient electricity reserves to meet the forecast spike in demand.
Madison Scott, 9 News.
Let's go to Belinda. And how much longer will these muggy conditions last?
Pete, by this time tomorrow it will be much cooler, but we are in for another muggy night. Last night the city only dropping to 24.7, our warmest night in more than 3 years, and tonight it could be even hotter. Sydney once again only dropping to about 25, not far off the city's average top temperature for January, which is 26. But the mercury will soar much higher than that tomorrow, the city reaching around 29 by 8 a.m. and up to 38 before lunchtime, with warm northwesterly winds, but then a gusty southerly change arriving mid-afternoon, finally bringing some relief. Our west copping the worst of the heat, most suburbs hitting 40 degrees with a chance of a thunderstorm in the afternoon and evening. Much of our state sweltering through heatwave conditions. I'll be back with the latest warnings after sport, Pete.
Belinda, thank you. North Queensland is tonight bracing for impact as Cyclone Kirrily hurtles towards Townsville. With schools closed, flights cancelled and locals told to stay indoors. It's reached Category 2 intensity and is expected to reach the area at about 10 tonight. A woman has been charged with attempted murder after the car she was driving with her daughter inside crashed head-on into a truck. The 7-year-old child was left with horrific burns after the fiery Katoomba crash.
6 a.m. Monday morning. This was the car a mother and her 7-year-old daughter were in when it burst into flames. The Hyundai veering off the Great Western Highway at Katoomba after colliding head-on with a semi-trailer. But police allege this was no accident, but rather attempted murder. The 31-year-old single mother from Broken Hill, who cannot be identified for legal reasons, now charged, accused of trying to kill her little girl. A witness to the crash saved the pair just in time. The girl airlifted to the Children's Hospital at Westmead with serious burns. Her mother treated too, sustaining several broken bones. Her lawyer claims she suffered a mental health episode.
The 31-year-old remains in hospital under police guard. Her family supported her here at Parramatta Local Court today, where she appeared via a bedside hearing over the phone. Her application for bail was refused.
In Parramatta, Hayley Francis, 9 News.
Investigators today returned to the scene of yesterday's light plane crash near Camden to try and determine exactly what went wrong. A 16-year-old boy who held a recreational pilot certificate was killed when the Cessna 172 crashed into a paddock shortly after takeoff.
He was a very bright and enthusiastic individual, and he clearly had a passion for aviation and was pursuing a commercial career.
The flight school the boy was flying with has suspended all training flights. Disgraced former NRL star Jared Hayne will make another bid for freedom with an appeal hearing for his rape conviction to be heard in April. The 35-year-old was jailed last year after being found guilty of sexual assault at his third trial. Hayne wants his conviction overturned, claiming the jury reached an unreasonable verdict. The growing divide over Australia Day took an ugly turn today. Vandals cutting down a statue of Captain Cook in Melbourne. And Indigenous activists and allies say the monument of the British explorer should never be restored.
Hoodies and masks covering their faces, armed with angle grinders and spray paint. Magic, lights, camera, action. This was a carefully planned act of vandalism. The target, Captain Cook.
Erected a ladder on the side and then used electric equipment to be able to remove them. It made a lot of noise, there were a lot of sparks.
At 3:30 this morning, the metal sculpture was sawn off at Captain Cook's ankles and dumped on the grass with a rope around his neck.
It is a good way to make your message. Whether it's a good message, I'm not sure.
It's a part of history. It's Australia.
Residents called police, but by the time officers arrived, the culprits had left.
This sort of vandalism really has no place in our community.
The colony will fall was spray painted on the plinth. It's not the first time the statue has been targeted.
Captain Cook, as we say, he's the founding father of genocide in this country.
Police are also investigating a spray paint attack on the Queen Victoria Monument near the Royal Botanic Gardens. Heritage Victoria will come out to inspect what is left of the Captain Cook statue to see if it can be restored. In the meantime, there will be extra security patrols here and around other statues in the city of Melbourne. More than 100,000 people will gather at Parliament House tomorrow morning for the Invasion Day rally as calls grow louder to change the date.
This represents, the journey of the past, but we can talk about a new journey of the future.
We will be working with Council to repair and reinstate the statue.
Eliza Rugg, 9 News.
If you do choose to celebrate, there'll be plenty of ways to mark our National Day. This Australia Day Eve, organisers have been busy putting the finishing touches on every event, even as a survey revealed most Australians would rather spend the day at work.
The stage is ready, the singers warmed up and the performers squeezing in one last practice before the big day.
Our voices really matter on this day, and it's beautiful that we can amplify it right here at Barangaroo.
That's where the Woogalora morning ceremony will be held, our First Nations people centre stage.
I celebrate the survival of my people, and so does this country, I feel.
It will be followed by a harbour fest, a great Aussie barbecue and a concert at Circular Quay. There are also events across our suburbs, pool parties on the northern beaches, hot air balloons at Parramatta, a concert at Cronulla and fireworks at Campbelltown. Before any of the ceremonies and celebrations, the day will begin with a dawn reflection here at the Opera House. The sails lit up in Aboriginal artwork as the sun rises.
We're coming together in a respectful way, in a truth-telling way.
If you're driving into the city, these are the routes you'll want to avoid. George Street from 4 a.m. to midnight, Milson's Point between 10:30 and 1, and the Carl Expressway between 7:30 and 10:30 at night. Officially, it's a public holiday, but a new survey claims 3 in 4 Australians would prefer to be at work and bank the day off.
I'm happy to work.
I would choose to work because I get paid extra.
Massilia Eiley, 9 News.
And 9, Sophie Upcroft is live for us in Canberra tonight, where the Australian of the Year will soon be announced. Sophie, the nominees are arriving now.
They are walking the red carpet now, Pete. 34 of the most influential Australians who are tonight being celebrated. Each of the nominees have already been crowned winners in their home states across 4 categories. The New South Wales Joint Australians of the Year, who are in the running for the top gong tonight, are Professors Richard Scolyer and Georgina Long, and they have saved thousands of lives, pioneering immunotherapy treatment for melanoma. Richard was diagnosed with brain cancer last year. They are now using that research on Richard, hoping to improve treatment for all patients with brain cancer.
To not apply what we know in melanoma to fight a cancer where treatment hasn't changed in 20 years, I don't feel that it was courageous. It felt like this is something we needed to do.
Our New South Wales professors are in esteemed company, so it will be tough competition, but we will find out who is the 2024 Australian of the Year in the next couple of hours. Pete?
Terrific, Sophie. Thank you. Sydney Airport heist. The Kingsgrove woman accused of stealing jewellery from a Cartier store. Also coming up, train passengers evacuated the level crossing crash near Windsor that shut down services. Russia accuses Ukraine of shooting down a jet packed with its own prisoners of war. And emergency crews battle a fuel tanker fire. Then there's a deadly and devastating detonation.
9 News, brought to you by Stan.
A shock for early morning commuters south of Windsor, their train crashing into a trailer at a level crossing in Vineyard. 29 passengers were on board when the crash happened at about 5. Nobody was injured. It's unclear how the trailer ended up on the tracks. Services were disrupted on the T1 Western line between Mulgrave and Riverston, but were restored about midday. A Cartier employee has been charged over a jewellery heist at Sydney International Airport. Police say $50,000 worth of luxury items were found in the woman's Kingsgrove home, but she told 9 News she's done nothing wrong.
Designer dress, designer bag, but don't accuse Chantel Elizabeth Carrington of being a designer thief.
I just certainly didn't do any such thing. That's disgusting.
It was 2 weeks ago when the Kingsgrove woman was forced out the front door in her nightie. Hands in the air, she surrendered before being placed under arrest. The AFP raid discovering bracelets, pens, earrings and pendants that her employer Cartier alleges were stolen from the store at Sydney International Airport.
There was no Cartier jewellery. Now, please.
We're alleging that she stole 15 items worth over $50,000 from that store, and that offence carries up to 10 years imprisonment.
Ms Carrington represented herself in court today, begging for her bail conditions to be relaxed. At the moment, she has to report to police 7 days a week. Carrington, whose real name is Sonia Ayubi, claims to have been in the gem business for almost a decade. Her social media says she's a singer. The 39-year-old is yet to enter a plea over the alleged Cartier con.
I haven't done anything wrong. Leave me alone, please.
Tiffany Genders, 9 News.
The United Nations says one of its relief agency shelters in southern Gaza has been struck with at least 9 people killed. It follows an Israeli government spokesperson ruling out a ceasefire despite reports negotiations were progressing. There's been a gruesome discovery in a remote part of the California desert. 6 people found shot dead about 80 kilometres northeast of Los Angeles. There are reports some of the bodies were burned. 2 cars with bullet holes were also found. It was like a scene from a movie set. In just seconds, these flames engulfed an intersection in Mongolia, erupting into a fatal fireball. 3 firefighters were killed and 11 others were injured. The blaze started when a truck carrying liquefied natural gas crashed into a car. A 12-storey apartment building also caught fire. Russia says more than 60 Ukrainian prisoners of war were killed when one of its aircraft was shot down. The Kremlin has labelled it a terrorist act. Ukraine denies any involvement.
The last seconds of the doomed flight, disappearing behind buildings as it went down before a thunderous sound at a rising fireball. At the front of the plane, there was fire, this witness says. Then there was an explosion. Close analysis appears to show something falling from the aircraft before the crash. Russia says 74 people on board were killed, including 65 Ukrainians being transported to the border for a prisoner swap. The Ilyushin military aircraft went down in the Belgorod region, which borders Ukraine. Russia says radars registered the launch of 2 Ukrainian missiles before the plane crashed. They shot their own soldiers in the air, their own, the Speaker of Russia's parliament told lawmakers, while Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in the United Nations called it a terrorist act. Ukraine did not say it shot down the aircraft, but did say a prisoner swap had been scheduled for the day, but claimed Russia had failed to give an agreed alert about creating a safe airspace.
We're obviously doing the best we can to try to get more clarity and more information on it.
Ultimately, establishing the truth may be as elusive as finding peace in this war. In London, Brett McLeod, 9 News.
Police raids at Greystanes, Concord and Cabramatta. The gang accused of supplying guns across Sydney. The cost of a stamp set to soar while Australia Post is hiking prices. Also coming up, storm in a teacup. The claims that adding salt makes the perfect brew cause quite the stir.
And how this number plate could buy you 12 of these Ferraris.
9 News, brought to you by Australia's #1 selling vehicle, Ford Ranger.
It started when a gun, ammunition and cash were found dumped in bushland in Greystanes last week and ended with a knock on the door from heavily armed police this morning. 4 men aged 19 and 20 have been arrested in Concord West, Greystanes and Cabramatta, all charged with supplying unlawful firearms. Police allege the gun was left in bushland to be picked up by a buyer. Another day, another price rise. This time the cost of a stamp is set to soar to $1.50. The consumer watchdog has officially approved the increase, one which Australia Post hopes will help slow its massive financial losses.
The price of a stamp is set to jump 25% as Australia Post tries to claw its way back into profitability. The ACCC today approving a plan to raise the cheaper stamps from $1.20 to $1.50. Larger letters lifted to $3 and the biggest ones $4.50. The watchdog acknowledging this will have some impact on consumers and small businesses, but Australia Post still says it's not enough.
That 30 cents still doesn't get us anywhere near covering the cost of delivering letters, but it's taking us in the right direction.
The National Postie delivered a $200 million loss last financial year, triggering an overhaul from the government and regulator. Letters now only need to be delivered every second day, allowing it to focus more on its parcels. And it says it handled 100 million of those in just the last 3 months.
Letters are in an unstoppable decline, is the reality, but we've got the support we need. In the short term, we'll continue to work with governments on that.
They've got a long way to go before they can compete on an even footing with big commercial partners like Amazon, who are offering free delivery to members within 24 or 48 hours. Australia Post is nowhere near that quick, and they cost more.
There could be more price hikes to come, but for now, the ACCC estimates this increase will only cost the average household about an extra $4 a year. That said, they will be holding open submissions until February 15 before making a final decision. Chris Kohler, 9 News.
They may be just slices of painted tin to some, but heritage car fans are furiously bidding for the chance to own the first number plates issued in 2 states. The plates go to auction this weekend and the interest has been such that they've already hit reserve and will definitely be sold, and both will sell in the millions.
The 2016 Ferrari California. 3.9 litres of turbocharged V8. And if you had this number plate, you could buy 12 of them.
Q1 currently sitting at a bid of just over $4 million.
The first number plate issued in Queensland. Q1 has changed hands only once, in 1985.
And the current custodian actually bought it then for $100,000. It's got prestige, it's got rarity. Find another one, you won't.
Oh, yes, you will.
What is it?
Is that what I think it is? Mm-hmm.
In what has shaped up as a State of Origin playoff, New South Wales #1 is also on the block.
And it was issued to the first Police Commissioner for New South Wales.
And in this Origin contest, it's been all New South Wales since the start of play.
By 10 a.m, the bid had gone to $3 million. By the time we were sitting down for dinner that night, $10 million was the current bid and the phone was running off the hook.
And even before the gavel has fallen, the Australian record for a heritage plate has not just been shattered, it's been pulverised.
That was New South Wales 4, and that was in 2020.
What did that go for?
$2.4 million.
Oh, mate, both plates go under the hammer on Saturday.
So we've still got 2 days' worth of bidding to go. Who knows where it's going to end?
At Villawood, Mike Dalton, 9 News.
An academic in the United States has caused a storm in a teacup, infuriating tea drinkers by claiming the perfect cuppa requires a pinch of salt. The US Embassy in London has hit back at the suggestion, saying such an outrageous proposal threatens the very foundation of our special relationship. It's believed salt will counteract the bitterness of the tea. In the news ahead, the simple red flag of brittle bones in older Australians, what to look out for, and the furry little miracle that emerged from the ruins of a ferocious Hunter house fire. Stunning emergency cruise. James, we will learn who will be in the women's final tonight.
That's right, Pete. It's a huge night of semi-final action here at Melbourne Park, while Novak Djokovic draws a crowd for a practice hit after his main rival for the title was knocked out. A major milestone for Mitchell Starc as Australia dominates the Windies at the Gabba. Plus, the clubs take their Las Vegas visa concerns straight to Peter V'landys.
And Sydney is in for a summer scorcher tomorrow. Your Australia Day forecast is coming up soon.
Novak Djokovic's path to a record-extending 11th Australian Open title has been given a boost, with Carlos Alcaraz stunned in a huge upset. The Spanish young gun couldn't withstand the powerful serve of Alexander Zverev, leaving Djokovic as the man to beat.
Pulling a crowd wherever he goes.
Novak Djokovic is always the main attraction, even on the practice courts. The defending champion fine-tuning his game plan to take down Jannik Sinner, the only player to beat Djokovic twice last year. A more subdued reaction for Daniil Medvedev, though his preparations are anything but. Trying to end his 2-year wait for a second Grand Slam title. Alexander Zverev might have discovered the secret to beating Carlos Alcaraz, producing his finest performance of the tournament to upstage the number 2 seed in 4 sets, sealing a semi-final showdown with Medvedev.
I was rushing him quite a lot. I was playing extremely aggressive. If you let him control the points, if you let him control the game and the pace of the game, he's unbeatable.
The women's next generation is making waves. 21-year-old Qin Wen-zhen clawing her way from a set down against Anna Kalinskaya to make her maiden slam semi-final, all the while oblivious to a very special spectator.
Of course, I know the guy, but I don't know you are watching. I only focus on that green ball and the opponent. I can't watch anything around when I'm in court.
Nicole Dunn, 9 News.
Yes, great value, and tonight, back on court yet again, Jelena Dokic is with me. A great doubleheader of semi-finals for the women. The first one, the number 2 and 4 seeds going head-to-head. What are we going to get in a rematch of last year's US Open final?
Yeah, absolutely, and 2 of the favourites. When we would have gone into this tournament and the draw, you would have put these 2 women as the favourites for the title. So it is that rematch of the US Open final where Sabalenka was leading comfortably, won the first set, but then everything turned. So it will be interesting what happens tonight, and Sabalenka hasn't lost a set yet, hasn't really been pushed in this tournament, and Coco Gauff has, in her words as well, kind of got that bad match out of the way in the previous round, but she'll have to step it up tonight, and we'll see what happens, but it's definitely the match to look out for today.
Certainly is, and now we know Novak is really the red-hot favourite for the men's title. He's got an afternoon match tomorrow against Jannik Sinner. How will he go after a couple of days' rest?
Yeah, look, this is the match as well that when the draw came out, it was like, oh, well, this is the semi-final potentially, and Sinner has beaten him. Out of the last 3 times they've played, Sinner won twice, and that was at the end of last year. So he has the game. He's got a massive serve, big game, big backhand, but it is about belief, and it is about whether you can beat Novak over 5 sets, and not many have been able to do that. So we'll see if he can do it tomorrow.
Can't wait for that one, Jelena. You've got a big night ahead. Off you go.
Thank you.
Jelena Dokic joining us here at Melbourne Park. Now, of course, lots of focus on the tennis, but the cricket too. Australia, their fast bowlers flexing their muscles early on day 1 of the day-night test at the Gabba. The West Indies won the toss and batted, struggling to 5 for 105. Mitchell Starc reaching a magic milestone in the first session.
The Australians stood arm in arm for the anthem, with the exception of COVID outcast Cameron Green. Hazelwood on song early, Brathwaite given out LBW.
He's given him out early on in the piece.
But replays revealed a healthy inside edge, and the Windies skipper batted on. Not for long.
And there's the first one. Hazelwood is relentless.
Hazelwood's major concern ensuring Green wasn't part of the party. From there was plenty to celebrate. All the pacemen involved, first Cummins.
It's that man again, the postman, Pat.
Then Starc took over the show.
Edged and taken, beautifully done.
And soon he had a milestone.
Edged and gone. Mitch Starc has 350 test wickets.
He added 1 more to the tally. The Windies 5 for 64 at lunch. What had been a tough watch for the tourists became a little more bearable after the break.
Takes it on, belts it.
Joshua Da Silva taking the fight to the Australian attack.
Beautiful stroke.
But the pink ball can cause trouble when the sun goes down, so it could be a tough night ahead for the batsman. Chris Hodgkinson, 9 News.
The Sydney Sixers' hopes of a 4th Big Bash title were blown away by the Brisbane Heat in the final at the SCG. Retiring veteran Steve O'Keefe taking his 99th and final Big Bash wicket in the Heat's total of 8 for 166. Spencer Johnson ripped through the Sixers batting lineup, taking figures of 4 for 26. Michael Neese's athletic work in the field, handing Paul Walter a catch to remove Sean Abbott in the final over. The Sixers all out for just 112, the Heat claiming their 2nd Big Bash title. Well, Vegas-bound clubs will approach Australia's ambassador to the United States, Kevin Rudd, and former ambassador Joe Hockey to ensure players won't be sent home with visa issues. The CEOs had it out with the NRL today, expressing several concerns about the historic trip.
Fearing the game's American dream was fast becoming a nightmare, frustrated clubs today called a crisis meeting with the NRL. Sitting down with Peter V'landys and Andrew Abdo, the clubs raised concerns over the lack of detail surrounding the Las Vegas doubleheader just 5 weeks away.
I think everyone who knows Peter will know that he's a can-do person and he'll want to get things done. And so he understood our concerns. He also understood some of the challenges that Andrew's faced, and he was able to bulldoze through a few of them today.
They emerged one happy family, and one of the main concerns revolved around visa issues and whether players like Latrell Mitchell and Jack Whiten would be turned around at the US border given they had previously been arrested.
From what Peter and Andrew said today, they're very confident that that won't be the case, that all the players will get access to the US, which is really important for the game. We want to see the best players on the field, and we want to put the best show on for the US market.
As well as visa assurances, the clubs walked away with a guaranteed $175,000 for their training camps. They also secured unlimited insurance in the case of a catastrophic injury and have been told their flights, accommodation and training grounds have now all been locked in. The NRL insists this is just the start of something special.
We believe we're onto something that's really important for the long-term viability of the game. We believe in taking rugby league to the rest of the world and to other markets. America is really just the start of that.
Michael Chammas, 9 News.
And veteran Blues prop Kezi Apps is already dreaming about the impact a 3-game Origin series will have on the women's game, hoping it will encourage young girls to pursue careers in rugby league.
To see their skill level now is just so amazing. I guess for myself, I didn't have that support. It's only going to go up from here, and it's just scary to think once we become full-time athletes, what level of rugby league that these females can do.
New South Wales lost the Shield to Queensland last year despite winning a game each. Pete, the doubleheader of women's semis tonight. We're down to 2 by the end of the evening. See you soon.
Good on you, James. Thank you, mate. Brittle bones is the fastest growing chronic condition in Australia. Now the new research on the simple signs that show who's at risk. Have you got your numbers in? The ticket rush ahead of tonight's $150 million Powerball draw. And the famous old advertisement given a new lease of life.
Back in 2021, Domino's Pizza was a superstar. The share price was around $162. Now it's under $40, crashing 30% today alone after reporting weak sales across Asia. There's also that thorny issue in the back of investors' minds. Pizza Hut is making a comeback, suggesting late last year it might be planning to open another 400 stores. So that was the major crash on the market today. Domino's thrown out, box and all. But everywhere else, things were mostly solid. The share market will be closed tomorrow for Australia Day, but has notched up 4 positive days in a row this week. And the Australian dollar is a bit weaker, buying 65.75 US cents, heading into the long weekend.
Thank you, Chris. If you struggle to walk 1 kilometre, it could be a concerning sign of weak bones and future crippling disease. They're the findings from the Garvan Institute's researchers, who have uncovered a link between walking ability and your future risk of bone fractures.
When Elaine Cotter developed severe lower back pain, she spent 3 years looking for answers.
I tried every medication they prescribed, and the pain was really strong. I just couldn't believe that it was just weak muscles and mild arthritis.
The real cause of her pain was finally uncovered after a bone density scan.
I had a severe case of osteoporosis in my spine and a milder one in my hips.
To help identify those who slip under the radar, researchers looked at walking ability and whether that could be a sign of long-term risk. When they analysed the records of 250,000 healthy Australians over the age of 45, 1 in 5 were found to struggle to walk 1 kilometre, and that was linked with increased risk of developing a fracture within 5 years.
People who reported difficulty walking 500 metres or 100 metres were at greater risk than those who reported difficulty walking a kilometre.
In fact, walking difficulties contributed to more than 60% of all fractures. It could be a simple way to intervene early.
And see if I should be investigated.
Experts say osteoporosis is the fastest growing chronic condition in Australia, and the consequences can be severe. 26% of people who suffer a hip fracture die within a year.
I think it's really important to screen early and not wait.
Gabriella Rogers, 9 News.
Emerging from the ruins of a burnt-out home in Singleton, a shaken and foamy pet dog. Black Diamond, the Chihuahua, covered in soot and firefighting foam, somehow survived, trotting out of the blackened shell of the house after the fire was put out. The pup, understandably a little frightened, gave a firefighter a small nip on the thumb. She was cleaned up and reunited with her relieved owner. Both are okay. The new year has brought a welcome boost to the state's hospitals. 1,000 graduate doctors are this month being deployed to hone their skills in wards and emergency departments.
For southwest and western Sydney, it'll mean 250 medical interns moving in and around their hospitals.
The Health Minister on hand this morning at Fairfield to welcome his new recruits. Medical interns undergo 2 years of training in both regional and metropolitan hospitals. And of course, we wish them all the best. And we wish you all the best. It could produce the biggest single lottery win in our history. And tonight's Powerball draw has given life to the idea of being in it to win it. According to the lot, half of Australia's adult population will have a ticket for the $150 million prize to be drawn in the next few hours. And your odds of winning, about 1 in 134 million. Everything old is new again, especially when it comes to jingles. And one of our favourites is back from the 80s. VB is once again recognising those with a hard-earned thirst, this time with a modern twist.
Wood divided by saw, multiplied by elbow grease. He's the Pythagoras of eucalyptus, the Einstein of pine.
The new ad will launch on Sunday. Coming up in our news, Belinda with the weather.
Thanks, Pete. Cloudy skies and light winds for Sydney tonight and another muggy night ahead. Right now it's about 26 degrees, but thanks to the humidity, it feels more like 30. I'll tell you when we'll finally get some relief after the break. Welcome back. It was a good day to be indoors with the aircon cranking. Sydney side is waking up to a muggy morning, briefly dropping to 24.7 just before dawn, making it our warmest January night since 2017. Top temperatures today, not as warm as expected thanks to that extensive cloud stretching over Sydney, a top of 29 in Penrith, which is actually 2 degrees below average. The city hitting 32, but it felt more like 35 thanks to the dew point, which is still unusually high for this time of year. Heat over inland New South Wales has been intense, the mercury soaring into the mid-40s in our state's far west, up to 44 in Broken Hill. Those hot northwesterly winds also spreading to parts of the east, even Newcastle nudging 40 degrees. Tomorrow a trough will slowly track to the northeast, continuing to draw that hot air across New South Wales. Severe tropical cyclone Kirrily expected to cross the Queensland coast near Townsville tonight as a Category 3 system. A partly cloudy day ahead for Brisbane and a top of 33, a cooler 28 and a possible shower for Canberra. Melbourne only making it to 22 with the chance of an early shower. Back home, and this is the latest 3-day heatwave warning, conditions easing across the Hunter, but the mid-north coast still sweltering through extreme conditions. Newcastle hitting 41 tomorrow, up to 44 in Bourke. Dubbo also reaching the 40s, a cold front bringing a cool and gusty southerly change to western and southern parts of our state. Showers forecast across the south and severe thunderstorms possible about the Hunter in the afternoon. Sydney turning up the heat for our public holiday, warm west and northwesterlies reaching 25 to 40 kilometres per hour in the morning before a southerly change arrives in the early afternoon. Top temperatures about 10 degrees above average in our west, most suburbs hitting 40, the city heading for 38 and another muggy night ahead, only dropping to the mid-20s again. Thankfully a cooler weekend, tops around 27 in the city with a shower or two on Sunday, partly cloudy conditions on Monday. warming up to 30 on Tuesday with the chance of a morning shower on Wednesday. A big drop in temperatures in our west, about 11 degrees cooler on Saturday with cloudy skies, some sunshine on Sunday, then heating up into the 30s again early next week. And I'm sorry to say, overnight temperatures remaining above average for most of the week. Pete.
Belinda, thank you. The Australian Open is up next. That is 9 News for this Thursday. I'm Peter Overton. I hope you have a good evening. From all of us, good night.